All right. Today, I want to talk about Quibi and specifically, there we go. And specifically, why did uh, Quibi, Quibi, I think it's Quibi, fail? 1.75 billion of investment, huge backing, thought up by Jeffrey Katzenberg, huge success in the past in the entertainment industry. CEO is Meg Whitman, huge success in the past, eBay and elsewhere. Um, Kind of boggles the mind of why did it fail and why did it fail so quickly. So I don't think it was because that the leaders were idiots or anything like that, as I'm sure a lot of speculation will come out. And there's always people who want to take cheap shots at people who are out there taking the risks and making the investment ideas. And I certainly wouldn't substitute my judgment for Jeffrey Katzenberg or Meg Whitman. They've obviously been real successful in the past. So I read a Wall Street Journal article about it today and kind of want to take away get some takeaways from some items that they thought were the reasons for the fail and just add my 2 cents. So the one thing that the Wall Street Journal kind of focused on was the strategy of focusing on mobile devices. So to take a step back, Quibi stands for Quick Bites. However the heck you pronounce it, it stands for Quick Bites, and it's a mashup of the two. So their idea was highly produced content in short streams. So similar to Netflix in that they had a show that had multiple episodes that you could do back to back to back, but the entire thing would be 2.5 hours. So movie length, but multiple episodes that would be released on time schedules. The general idea was that, younger audiences, they're targeting millennials, 25 to 35, would not only be wanting to watch shorter content in shorter bites, but would also be doing it on their phone rather than TV. What was interesting is their original idea, and I guess for a long time they held true to this, was that they were not going to do anything with TVs or computers. I don't know. I'm not an insider. So there's a million meetings and conversations that went on, strategy meetings, and I could be missing something. It could be something related to they couldn't get enough financing to go any further. It could be a major blunder. I don't know. But I want to talk about just from the high level strategy, where I think things could have gone wrong. So this is a chart of a concept that I've been vlogging about a lot lately from the Boston Consulting Group strategy book, the trade-off between richness and reach. So richness is the robustness of your product. And in Quibi's case, they're producing very highly produced content that's very expensive. They had, Chris Helmsworth, Anna Kendrick, very famous stars in these productions, which obviously is very expensive to make. You think about how much money Netflix spends, making their productions. Well, Netflix is a gigantic tech company with they're a public company. They have huge access to capital and can do that. Quibi was betting that they could make these highly produced short films, short segmented films, and that customers would purchase that and they'd be able to market it before they essentially ran out of money. The problem with highly produced content, in my opinion, is that who are you really competing against? Now, the article, especially at first, mentions Netflix, mentions who else does it mention? This shows you how much I don't pay attention to any stuff. Is it Hulu? No, Disney Plus, Netflix and Disney Plus as kind of main competitions. And, Quibi is obviously doing something different because these are shorter segments, shorter films. In my opinion, where a mistake may have been made was realizing, number one, who is really watching those shorter films and also who the real competitors, because I don't think it's Netflix and Disney for this. So first of all, I think the demographic is not necessarily millennials watching stuff on their phone, although millennials obviously do. They travel with their phone all the time. But I also think millennials watch a lot of Netflix and a lot of Disney Plus, Hulu, things like that, and require that it it contain it be actually on their TV. They're not willing to watch that stuff on their phone. What do people watch on their phone? Well, they watch YouTube and they watch TikTok. And what is the difference with those with those platforms? Well, number one, it's free. You don't have to pay anything. YouTube doesn't really pay anything to produce the content. They pass along advertiser revenue, obviously, but they don't, directly cut checks to all the millions and millions of people who are producing content for them for other people to watch that generates ad revenue that gets somewhat distributed to the content creators. And TikTok, same thing going on. The platform doesn't have to pay to produce the content. And if you look, I think, and I could be wrong, I haven't done any demographic studies. If you look at who is actually watching that content on YouTube and TikTok predominantly, it's a much younger demographic, I think. And this is anecdotal because this is my kids. But if you look at my younger kids, I have a 10-year-old daughter and two twin 13-year-old boys. They are watching TikTok and YouTube on their phone nonstop. They don't watch TV. But my older boy, I should qualify that. They watch only sports on TV. It's about it. And maybe occasionally shows on Netflix, but not so much now that they have access to phones. They would rather watch, TikTok, YouTube, and that's the content that they consume in terms of, what would traditionally be TV. So what I wonder is if the demographic was wrong, because I've noticed as my oldest son, who's 15, has just in the last couple years, he's migrated away from the phone and is actually watching more TV. So he's watching more Netflix, obviously sports on regular TV. But I really wonder if that's kind of what they're missing here, is that there's not as much of a demand amongst older people, even meaning millennials, 25 to 35, for watching shows on the phone. I think that's what went wrong. I think if they had actually targeted, because they said, I was reading an article where Katzenberg says we're not targeting kids and we're not targeting families. Well, I really think if you're talking about, only consuming on the phone, that's probably who they should have gone with. And I could be wrong. Again, I don't have any studies that show that. But if I see, my kids, their friends, all the kids I see around here, the ones consuming the most video content on their phones tend to be young. And I know older people, and the people I know who consume YouTube on the phone, including myself, because I do consume YouTube videos on the phone, but they're always, podcast forms, essentially. I find that, especially when I'm in the mood for, short, not listening to a whole podcast, because I don't have time to listen to a whole podcast, I'll often go to YouTube where there's a lot of podcast clips, but I would never sit there and actually consume a video on my phone. And I'm older, I'm not their demographic. I'm 7 years older than the oldest end of their demographic. But I really doubt that millennials in that 25 to 35 are going to sit there and accept only being able to watch shows on their phone. Now, Quibi did go to an app, at some point, a TV app at some point, but by then it sounded like it was too late and maybe they should have done that from the very beginning. And, who knows? This short film concept, that could have worked. I don't think that was necessarily the problem. I think that the demographic and the price that they had to pay for that was the big problem. And, I want to show it in terms of this richness versus reach. Well, Quibi, it's a very robust product. They're paying a lot for it. And traditionally, you don't get as much reach if you do that. Whereas, your YouTube, your TikTok, this isn't scientific by any means, or somewhere down here where they don't have to pay anything, and they're getting a gigantic reach for it. Because Quibi has to pay for it and they have to charge, I don't know exactly where along this line they are, but they're charging a subscription fee, and people aren't going to pay even it was $5 to $7 or something like that. But people aren't going to pay that. Parents aren't going to pay that when their kids are perfectly content watching YouTube and TikTok for free. If I'm going to have my kids watch complete crap, just honestly, I'm going to have it be produced by your ordinary Americans rather than Hollywood. And I think a lot of people are going to feel that way. So that's where I think they run into a problem. And what's interesting is if they had done it right and produced content directly for kids, this is where a lot of tech companies, are able to create a ton of value. If you can take this traditional curve of richness and reach and make a more robust product that you're able to get a lot of reach with, well, then you got something. I don't know exactly how they would have done that, and I don't know if I have the answer. I think it would have been in terms of creating something that would have been a little more highly produced than TikTok and YouTube, aimed at kids, and it would have been some sort of free subscription with upgrades or even advertising, within there under a YouTube TikTok model where it was just more highly produced but still free and aimed at kids. I think that type of a model may have worked. We'll never know with Quibi, but it's an interesting story. And I'll kind of end by saying, this isn't something that's designed to be critical of the people who had this idea, Katzenberg and Meg Whitman. Again, they're, extremely smart people. Their investors are extremely smart people. It's a good reminder that sometimes even really good ideas fail. And, in their letter to their investors, they said, maybe the idea wasn't good enough. Maybe it was just bad timing, meaning the coronavirus. And both those things could have been true, or it could have been a combination. But I do think it's an interesting case study from a strategy perspective. And I think I'm so interested in this richness versus reach trade-off between richness and reach, and figuring out where you ultimately want to be on that pendulum. So on that continuum. So hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.